Let's talk about a case that is just completely baffling. On July 20th, 2015, a 2-year-old boy, Dyer Coons Jr., was on a camping trip in a remote part of Idaho with his family. And then he just vanished, seemingly into thin air. It kicked off a mystery that, honestly, still keeps people up at night, right? I mean, this is the question at the heart of it all. Think about it. A 2-year-old boy in a pretty contained area with his family literally just feet away. How on earth does he disappear so completely without leaving anything behind? So let's just lay out the basic facts here so we're all on the same page. We've got Dyer Coons Jr., just 2 years old. He's at the Timber Creek campground with his parents, Vernal Coons and Jessica Mitchell, his great-grandfather, Robert Walton, and a family friend named Isaac. One minute he's there, and the next he's just gone. From the absolute get-go, the search for Dyer felt wrong. The things that search and rescue teams expect to find in a situation like this, well, they just weren't there. And that immediately set off some major alarm bells. Here's one of the first really strange details pointed out by the initial private investigator, Frank Phil. Dyer was supposedly wearing these little cowboy boots that were actually too big for him. Now, you can imagine a toddler trying to run around in rough terrain with boots like that. They'd fall off, almost for sure, but the search teams never found them, not a single boot. And that's really the core problem that stumped everyone. There were zero tracks. Search dogs, even incredibly skilled cadaver dogs, couldn't pick up a single scent. The complete absence of any physical evidence made it seem almost impossible that he had just wandered off or, been attacked by an animal. It was almost like he was plucked out of thin air. So you can see why this was so strange. And it led to a critical turning point. Within just a few months, the entire investigation started to shift dramatically. It went from being a missing person case to something else entirely. Just look at how quickly things evolved. The first private investigator, Frank Phil, who was initially defending the parents, was off the case in about 2 months. A new PI, Philip Klein, comes on board, and by January, he's already publicly ruling out the most common theories, like abduction or an animal attack. So why did that first investigator leave so abruptly? Well, he didn't mince words. Frank Phil put out this statement, and he pointed the finger directly at the parents, Vernal and Jessica. He basically said, "My deal was you'd be truthful, and in my professional opinion, you've both lied." He was convinced they were hiding something. Okay, so with the first PI out and accusing the parents of lying, the whole narrative just flips. The people who were supposed to be the grieving victims suddenly became the primary suspects.
And then a little over 6 months after their son vanished, it wasn't just speculation anymore. The Lemhi County Sheriff's Office made it official. Vernal Coons and Jessica Mitchell were publicly named as suspects. The sheriff even said they'd been less than truthful during interviews and polygraphs. And speaking of polygraphs, according to that second private investigator, Philip Klein, Dyer's dad, Vernal Coons, agreed to take 5 separate polygraph tests, administered by everyone from the FBI to local law enforcement. And the results? They were absolutely damning. Klein reported that Vernal failed every single one, not just by a little, but with results that showed, in his words, deep deception. He supposedly even failed simple control questions like, "Are you here to tell the truth today?" And it wasn't just Vernal. Dyer's mom, Jessica Mitchell, also went through a bunch of polygraph tests herself. She took a total of 4 with different law enforcement agencies. And you guessed it, her results were just as bad. According to Klein, she also failed all of her tests. And he was specific, saying she failed in the 99th percentile for deception. For investigators, this was a massive red flag that basically solidified her status as a prime suspect. Now, here's where things get even more intense. That second PI, Philip Klein, made this bombshell claim. He said publicly that Jessica had made a partial admission, admitting she knew where Dyer's body was. Now, to be fair, her lawyer shot back hard, calling Klein's statement outrageous and pretty much accusing him of trying to get famous off the case. So, with all this scrutiny on the parents, investigators started digging deeper into the timeline of that day. And what they found was that a key witness was telling a story that was completely different from what the parents were saying. This pretty much lays it all out. The parents' story was simple. They left Dyer with his great-grandpa. But the family friend, Isaac, told a totally different story. He said no, Vernal, Jessica, and Dyer all got in the truck and left the campground to look for gas. He even described a moment later on where he was showing Jessica a fishing spot and just assumed Vernal and Dyer were right behind them.
That is a huge, huge difference in the timeline. Isaac also mentioned something about Jessica's behavior right after Dior was reported missing. He said she seemed upset, but that she couldn't really look you in the face. Now, that might not seem like much, but for investigators, this was another detail that just felt off. It didn't seem like the typical reaction of a frantic mom looking for her lost child.
So what you have is no body, no real confession, and just a mountain of suspicion. So where does that leave this case today? Well, years have gone by, and honestly, the mystery has only gotten deeper.
Here's a quick rundown of where things stand now. Two key witnesses, Dior's great-grandfather and Vernal's dad, have both passed away, taking whatever they knew with them. The parents, Vernal and Jessica, they split up. Super weirdly, that camo hoodie Dior was supposedly wearing, it was found in their old apartment after they got evicted. And even though a cadaver dog got a hit near the campground a few years ago, a big search turned up absolutely nothing. At the end of the day, it's a case built on conflicting stories, failed polygraphs, and a total lack of hard evidence. And that's what makes this so incredibly difficult and so haunting. When you don't have a body, justice really depends on who you believe. And with key people no longer around to tell their side of the story, it just feels like this tragic puzzle with too many missing pieces, leaving all of us to wonder if we will ever know what really happened to little Dior Coons Jr.